Sam spat the beans onto his plate and started to cry. Thomas dropped his fork. It hit the tin plate with a hard clang. He looked at his son's wet, red face. He looked at the black, burnt beans in the pot. His jaw tightened. Then he stood up so fast his chair fell backward. He grabbed the whole pot with his bare hand and marched outside into the cold night air. Eli and Sam froze. Their father never moved like this, never so wild. Thomas threw the pot as far as he could. It flew across the yard and crashed into the dirt. Burnt beans scattered everywhere, black against the pale ground. A dog barked somewhere far off. The wind carried dust across the porch. Eli ran to the doorway, his small hand gripping the wood frame. "Pa," he said, his voice shaking. Thomas did not answer. He stood there in the dark, chest rising and falling, staring at the mess he had made. His shoulders dropped. He looked for a moment like a much older man. Sam crept up beside his brother, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "Are we in trouble?" he whispered. "No," Eli whispered back, but he did not sound sure. Thomas turned around slowly. His eyes were wet, though he would never call it crying. A rancher does not cry, not in Willow Creek, not in front of his sons. He walked back inside, past his boys, and stopped at the stove. His wife's old apron still hung there, faded and soft from years of washing. He touched it with 2 fingers, gentle as a whisper. Then he let his hand fall. "Pa, we're still hungry," Sam said quietly. Those 4 words hit Thomas harder than any fall from a horse ever had. He knelt down in front of his sons, right there on the cold kitchen floor. He took Sam's small hands in his rough ones. He looked at Eli too, at the thinness in his face, the tired shadows under his eyes. "I know," Thomas said, his voice cracked like old leather. "I know, and I'm sorry." He stood up. He walked to the shelf by the door, pulled down a scrap of paper and a stub of pencil, and sat at the table where his sons usually ate their burnt suppers. Eli watched him write. "What are you doing, Pa?" Thomas did not look up. His pencil moved slow and careful, like a man unused to writing. "Fixing this," he said, "once and for all." The next morning, before the sun had fully climbed the sky, Thomas saddled his horse and rode hard toward town, the paper folded tight in his shirt pocket. Close to his heart, the wagon wheels creaked to a stop outside the Bell Ranch. Thomas stepped onto the porch, wiping flour off his hands from another failed breakfast. He froze when he saw who climbed down. A woman alone, no husband beside her. She walked toward him with steady steps, her boots crunching on the dry dirt. Up close, Thomas saw the tiredness in her eyes, but also something else, something firm. "I saw your notice," she said. "I can cook, I need the work." Thomas said nothing at first. He just stared. Most folks in town had laughed at his notice or shook their heads and walked past it. This woman had ridden 2 miles alone to answer it. "Name's Thomas Bell," he finally said. "This here's my ranch." "Clara Whitfield," she replied. Before Thomas could say another word, the front door creaked open. Eli and Sam peeked out, curious, half hidden behind the wood frame. Sam's stomach growled loud enough for everyone to hear. His cheeks turned red with shame. Clara did not laugh at him. She did not judge him either. She simply smiled, small and warm, and looked back at Thomas. "May I see your kitchen?" she asked. Thomas blinked. No one had ever asked to see his kitchen like it mattered. "It ain't much," he warned. "Kitchens rarely are at first," Clara said, already walking past him toward the door. Inside, she looked at the cold stove, the burnt pot still sitting crooked from last night, the empty shelves. She touched nothing. She only looked, the way a doctor looks at a wound before deciding how to heal it. "I'll need supplies," she said. "Potatoes, carrots, salt meat if you have it, flour too." Thomas nodded slowly. "I got some, not much." "It will be enough," Clara said, "tonight." That evening, as the sun dipped low and orange behind the hills, Clara tied her apron and lit the stove herself. She moved with a quiet confidence, Thomas had not seen in this kitchen for 3 long years. She pulled a small cloth sack from her bag, filled with dried herbs she had saved and guarded like treasure through hard times. Eli and Sam crept close to the doorway, watching her stir the pot. They did not run off to play, as boys usually did. They stayed, drawn by the smell rising warm and rich into the evening air. When Clara finally set the bowls down, steam curling upward, Sam grabbed his spoon before she had even sat down herself. He took one bite. His eyes went wide. "Pa," he said, mouth still full, "it's good." Thomas looked at his son's face, bright for the first time in months, and then at Clara, who was watching quietly, waiting. He picked up his own spoon. His hand trembled just slightly as he took the first bite. Thunder cracked outside, so loud the windows rattled in their frames. Sam jumped and knocked his cup off the table. Milk spilled everywhere, running in white streams across the wood. "Sorry," Sam whispered, his lip trembling. He braced himself the way children do when they expect a scolding. Clara knelt down beside him before Thomas could even open his mouth. She wiped the milk with her apron, humming softly, like the storm outside was nothing at all. "Accidents happen," she said, "even to grown folks." Sam relaxed. His shoulders dropped. He looked up at her with something close to wonder. Rain hammered the roof harder now, like 1,000 small fists knocking to get in. Thomas moved to the window, checking the fence line out of old habit, though there was nothing to see but gray sheets of water. "You should stay till it passes," he said, not turning around. "Roads'll be mud soon." Clara hesitated only a moment. The boys should finish their supper first. She turned back to the stove, where fresh bread was cooling on a cloth, its crust golden and cracked just right. Eli was already reaching for a second slice before she gave him permission, and this time Clara only laughed instead of scolding him. "Careful," she said, "or there won't be any left for your father." "There's plenty," Eli said, grinning with flour still dusted on his nose from helping knead the dough that morning. Thomas turned from the window and watched them, the fire crackling, casting warm light across his sons' faces. He remembered the burnt beans. He remembered Sam crying. That felt like another lifetime now. Later, after the boys had fallen asleep by the hearth, tired from a full day and full bellies, Thomas made coffee. It came out bitter and too strong, as always. Clara took a sip anyway and did not complain. "You have given my sons their childhood back," Thomas said quietly. He stared into the fire instead of looking at her. "The word's easier to say that way. I don't know how to thank you enough." Clara turned her cup slowly in her hands. "I lost my own children before they were born," she said, "both times." Thomas looked up sharply, surprised by her honesty. "Cooking for your boys has given me something too," she continued. "A reason to rise each morning." The fire popped and hissed between them. Rain still beat against the roof, steady now instead of wild. Thomas felt something shift deep in his chest, something locked tight since his wife's passing. He had told himself many nights that he would never feel this again. He looked at Clara, firelight dancing across her tired, gentle face, and for the first time in 3 long years, hope stirred quietly inside him, small and warm as a single candle in a dark room. Clara wrapped her scarf tight around her neck, hands shaking slightly, though not from the cold. "I should go," she said. "The snow's getting heavier." She reached for the door. Thomas stepped in front of it before she could open it. Everyone in the kitchen went still. Sam, who had been sneaking a piece of bread, froze mid-bite. Eli looked up from the stove where he had been warming his hands. "Clara, wait," Thomas said. His voice cracked on her name, rough as old leather. His hat sat crushed in his hands, twisted from nervous fingers. A rancher who had broken wild horses without flinching now stood trembling before one small woman. "I did not hire you to fall in love with you," he said. "I only wanted my sons fed." Clara's hand slipped from the door handle. She said nothing, just watched him, waiting. "But you did not just fill their stomachs," Thomas continued. His words came slow, like a man walking across thin ice, unsure but determined. "You filled this whole house. You gave my boys their laughter back." He stepped closer. Snow drifted past the window behind him, soft and silent. "You gave me a reason to hope again," he finished. Clara's eyes filled with tears. She pressed her lips together, trying to hold steady, but her chin trembled anyway. "I did not come here looking for a husband," she whispered. "But I have watched you love your sons with such a tender, aching heart. I have come to care for this family more than I dared admit." Thomas closed the last bit of distance between them. The fire crackled behind him. Snow kept falling outside, soft as a blessing. "Then marry me, Clara," he said. "Not as my cook, as my wife, as their mother." For one long second nobody moved. Not Thomas, not Clara, not even the fire seemed to breathe. Then footsteps pounded down the stairs. Eli and Sam, who had been listening the whole time from the top step in their nightclothes, could not stay hidden a moment longer. They came running, bare feet slapping against the wood floor, both shouting at once. "Yes, say yes. Please, Clara, please." They crashed into her, small arms wrapping tight around her waist, nearly knocking her backward. Clara laughed through her tears, kneeling down fast to catch them both, holding them close against her chest. She looked up at Thomas over the boys' heads, her whole face shining, wet and joyful at once. "Yes," she whispered, "yes, I will." Thomas knelt down too, wrapping his arms around all three of them at once. The fire glowed warm behind them. Outside, snow blanketed Willow Creek soft and white, covering old sorrow like a gentle hand smoothing a wrinkled cloth. Inside, by the same stove where Clara had once cooked a simple stew for two hungry boys, a new family held each other tight, born not from loneliness, but from love that had grown slow and true.